A mournful call, so raw and true. Through misty hills the echoes play, chasing the ghosts of a fading day. The wind, it dances with the sound so bold. Silver whispers through the cold. Mountains weep as the notes do climb, a sorrowful hymn that escapes through time. Oh, hear the cries of the rising pipes, feel the strain where the soul collides. A tune that wraps in a tartan shroud, lifting the hearts of the heavy bowed. With thirsty hills, quiet falls as the music spills, a thread of past where the future leads, carried afar by these ancient seas. A lone piper stands where the clouds kiss earth, a solitary hymn giving life its worth. Each note a tear for the ones we've missed, echoes that linger through highland mist. Breathing life where silence grows, the pipes unlock what the heart bestows. Eternal words without the sound, heavy hearts they firmly ground.
Good morning, Monday morning, first light. A few minutes after was getting some things ready. Glad to be here. Kick off your Monday. Our verse today is Genesis 1:26. If you saw the notification that went out, wonderful verse. We'll be showing a picture of that in the morning show in just a few moments. We're doing a study in Genesis at church. We're much past Genesis 1, but there's a great verse here that I really want to just examine for a few minutes. And without even realizing, I think a lot of people, you see it on display a lot today, where a lot of people don't realize, or maybe they do, maybe they see it and they don't care. Heard a statement one time about someone I'll make mention of in a minute. But in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, the book of beginnings, Bereshit in the Hebrew, verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image. I like the emphasis on our, the Godhead, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And today, we see that almost being flipped around, where people are not seemingly given dominion over, but the animal kingdom itself is given preeminence over man. Certainly, disclaimer, we're not saying to abuse animals or anything like that. No. But we have dominion over them. And we've seen, animals are here, yes, some for, people have pets, and that's fine, that's good. Some pets are, wild. We leave them wild. They serve purposes in the ecosystem or whatever. Then there's animals that we kill and eat. You don't have to eat them if people don't want to eat the food that is there. They may choose other things that are planted. That's fine too. You don't have to. But it seems as though there's a push to stop that whatsoever for everyone, and that animals are given almost in some countries have laws against animals, and they take on a mythical power. They are worshipped. In many cases, that's always been there. All of the the dead gods, they have their, in that sense, there's no, the images are almost always animals, not always, but most times are animals. And there's today all kinds of laws that are being attempted or made or changed or trying to change them, even in the United States of America, against the killing of animals, the hunting. It's under constant attack. And, they don't even understand the ecosystem and how that can starve out those that are there if you don't thin the herds and things like that, especially some things we think about like deer. And then everybody complaining they build their homes in those habitats. Then they complain that there's deer, but then they complain that there's hunters who hunt the deer. And it's just a whole different ideology that has occurred. And and then they want to put these, in some cases, animals have been given more protections under the law than humans. In the case of the unborn, the same government, the same, in some cases, the same areas that would not protect the unborn, and a human will protect the unborn in an animal, and you would go to jail. It's most strange when we think about some of the things we live, type of ideology, type of thinking, type of thought processes that occur when we have this out of balance. And we are thankful for the animals that God has put in our midst. And people have dogs and cats and things like that. Absolutely. There's God has just given us so many things. And in one day in the perfect world, the violent nature of animals will go away. You can be bitten, you can be even killed by some animals. There's danger there that will go away in the future. But we just live in a strange time where it seems like more and more you see that. And I heard a statement one time. Someone who, and I think they were having some obvious issues. They had seen things, but I think there was some things just always there. And I get it. Dealing with humans can be most difficult sometimes. But there's people who have the attitude that animals are great, people are evil, and they say I don't want to. The statement was I don't want to even see people. I just want to see animals. That's dangerous, because then you start thinking, what does that mean? Where would you go if you became a decision maker? What are you going to push for in the future? What kind of things would you want to see? And we see already the seeds of depopulation for humans. I mean, that is out there. There are those in the world that we talked about, that me and Biscuit Boy, I think over the weekend or at the end of last week one, where people were talking about globalists and different ones who would see depopulation of people, but animals, that's a whole different matter. No, we don't see no depopulation of animals. It's much changed around. It's very sad that we have this, and people have a hatred, a literal hatred for people who eat of the animal in the field. But it could be a rabbit, it could be with a chicken or whatever, deer, different ones. There's a hatred there for hunters. And through those type of thought processes, then they raise offspring to hate that, and we're getting in a time frame where it's hard to get enough hunters sometimes. There's not enough in some areas, and so people travel in from other areas to help depopulate and hunt those areas, where there's so much, and it's just people are getting slowly. It's not being taught and not being shared, and of course, that lines up with gun control and the evil gun, and so it just, you see people like that. They would absolutely just break down and cry if they saw a weapon of any kind, and like it's going to just jump off the table and hurt them, and it's sad. I mean, I was at a pastor's place. I was traveling. I was staying out in Oklahoma, and I was staying on this 20-something acres of mainly forest that they lived on. It was just a beautiful area. And, they have a lot, they do have some crime there. So the family, every member of the family knows how to protect themselves with a weapon. And they understand, animals, they hunt. But also because there is some danger out there. So they have danger from bears and different things. You have to be careful, coyote, whatever. and they each of them have a weapon that's theirs, multiple probably. But I was staying in a room where a child was off to college, and it saved me some money. They were being very kind of bringing me in their home for, I think it was just there for one night. And I remember the pastor saying, "Oh, my daughter's 20 gauge shotgun is loaded, and in the corner. Is that a problem?" I said, "No, it's not a problem. Doesn't bother me a bit. I'm happy to have it there." And that's when he explained that. Well, we do have, stay prepared. There has been attacks, but also there's been crime. There's been people who have come off the beaten path looking. They know somebody lives out that way. They come out there to rob or whatever, even kidnap. There've been some crime. They see different kinds of crime out that way than we do here, even in the southeast on a different scale. And I felt that from pastor to pastor, places that had been broken into by gangs and they just overpowered even churches. Really sad. People just don't always see that or hear that. But in this wonderful verse, we have this dominion over the animals, and it's people are trying to flip that around where it's almost the animal has dominion over man, and then that just creates a whole mess of issues for people, who are it just throws the balance off. And then they look at you like you're some, you have three heads or something wrong with you because you. And again, I don't care if somebody wants to have. We down here in the South, it's the meat and three. that's where you go. You go to down here, the meat and three. There's some kind of meat most of the time on the table, not always, but most of the time there's some sort of meat. And then, people are repulsed by that. It's almost like they can't even look at you. They can't even look at the meat on the plate or whatever. And I just it gets more, going that way where we have more and more people like that. And then they create more and more restrictive laws where you can't hunt, or it makes it more difficult. They put restrictions on it of very limited time frames, and again there can be overhunting, and yes, you have to watch for people as being humans, sinners. There are those who would do the things they shouldn't, and they should be dealt with by the laws of the land. So they do that. Then what are they going to do with all these animals? I mean, all the animals that are not being eaten, that are here, they're going to procreate, and there's going to be just animals everywhere. Starve out the food for that group, and if they don't want to, they should at least appreciate what that happens and how that assists the ecosystem with staying healthy. And nowadays we just don't see that, and again that throws out not only balance. There's something wrong with a lot of times with people thinking that way, and then their balance of their understanding of and their relationship with God is off as well, if they even have one. And they just become different kinds of people. I mean, and again, I'm fully supportive. I love animals. We have a dog. There's not a problem on my end without any of that, but more and more you see things out there. We'll divert into different avenues here, but you see more and more things that are affecting, and it's affecting the church as well because of people and their thinking. And when they come in, and it's like, where'd you learn this? Where did you start teaching? And they're just it's so foreign, which that's a good thing. They're starting to learn, and they start to see that, and it just throws our ecosystem off spiritually. It really does. And people are just they in essence begin to worship animals into that sense. And again, that's it should not be put out of place of where this all belongs in relation to who we are, who God is, and everything. But you see that more and more, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. And so even in I was telling them over the weekend, if you've noticed, there is in the state of Oregon, there is. I didn't think about this when I was pulling this verse up, but in the state of Oregon, there is a move to ban hunting. It's ridiculous, and that's what's changed here is that they are beginning to worship the animals. They hate hunters. They hate what they do. They hate what they stand for. What they do. They don't eat meat, and I would think that this won't pass, but who knows? Can you imagine? You can't. What are you going to do with them? They start overrunning your state, your counties, and they eat up It's going to become a huge burden upon. And I was already, listening to a cattleman, a person who raises cattle in Oregon. I love listening to him as a man of God. And local sheriffs are put in the middle sometimes because they're being told to do certain things that they don't agree with, but they're being ordered by these administrations to do things. And I can tell you that off the side they're advising hunters what to do, because they're making it where in some states where you can't kill the the animal that would come in and kill your cattle. That's where it's going. And so you can't shoot them, and they don't realize they have no clue what they're doing and how it's it rips starts tearing into the cattle, destroying their their investment. I mean, they have that that's why prices go up for lots of things, including meat. But what they do, and in some cases the death becomes accidentally ran over. That's what happens. And there are sheriffs who are just saying, I'm not going to enforce these. I'm not going to. It's ridiculous. And they're hunters themselves. But this is what's happening in our nation and in our world. It's already that way largely across the planet. We're already seeing that, this worship, this unbalance against the proper, what animals, what they're there for. And they're being elevated into a position they were never intended to be by God. And it just shows where we're at in the timeline, so to speak, of where we're at in the timeline of God for us and where we're headed to. And things are going to get much murkier as we go along, as man fully descends into the chaos of sin and not serving God, not believing in God, rejecting God, and pushing against everything that God is, and even denying God. And that's where we're at. Anyway, that's First Light this morning. We'll stop there, and then we'll flip around and have the morning show in just a moment. Take care. God bless. Read your Bible today. Genesis is a great place to start. If you like to read, go there and read some of the Word this morning. Read the verses before and after. We didn't have time for that. This is First Light. We'll see you again in the morning. I'm Dave for Wolf Nation Network. Take care.
Oh, hear the cries of the rising pipes. Feel the strain where the soul collides. A true knot wraps in a tartan shroud, lifting the hearts of the heavy bow.